Welcome back. You're watching GB News Breakfast with Ellie and Paul sitting in for Anne and Stephen this morning. Really good to have you with us. We're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio.
Let's have a look at today's front pages on your Sunday. And the Sunday Times claims that the NHS covered up an ambulance death scandal involving alleged mistakes by paramedics in the northeast of England.
Front page of the Observer leads on PM to sacrifice top official over Partygate to save himself. The paper says that Boris Johnson is expected to scapegoat the head of the civil service, Simon Case, when the Sue Gray report is released. We'll talk about that in just a moment.
The Sunday Express reports on plans to make every pupil in England eligible for one-to-one tuition to make sure help is provided to everyone in need.
The Mail on Sunday leads with asylum seekers supposedly abandoning their attempts to stay in the UK for fear of being sent to Rwanda.
An apparent attack on unions by the Tories is detailed in the Sunday Telegraph. There it is for you.
And the Sunday Mirror reports that Colleen Rooney has told a friend she now thinks she will be vindicated in the Wagatha Christie trial.
Okay, it's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is Pete Price, who's a broadcaster and political consultant, and Emma Burnell. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We've got lots to go through. Pete, should we start with you in this really shocking story that's leading the Sunday Times about the NHS changing records to hide mistakes? Tell us a bit more about that.
Indeed. And before I do, can I say, it's lovely to be with you. And we've never met before either. So it's a gorgeous panel.
All your friends here.
Nice panel. It's just...
Well, it's wonderful that you're here with us this morning.
It's nice to have an older person, and I love my description. I've never been a consultant to a...
Yeah, I think that's me.
Everybody in Liverpool going, what? Anyway, yeah.
Hey, you're probably better than I am, Pete, I don't think.
I'm a good bluffer, like most politicians.
Well, then you're perfect.
Right, the story is a serious story, and it's really sad. Also, in the Sunday Mirror, the headline there is needless fatalities blamed on the trust. 1,000 deaths. Here's the headline of the Sunday Times. NHS cover up the ambulance death scandal. Concerns about raising more than 90 cases in which whistleblowers say the North East Ambulance Service have failed. What upsets me about this story is it should be kept out of the papers. We've just had a pandemic. We've praised and praised the NHS for so long, the ambulance service, everybody. Yes, we need to know, but these headlines are very, very unhelpful to people who are grieving and suffering. And then who's going to climb out the woodwork and go, yeah, that happened to mine? And it's all of a sudden, it's like, are we turning on them? Yes, we need to know. But to me, these headlines are totally, I don't know if you agree, but totally unnecessary.
Emma, we do obviously, it seems like a bit of a contradiction that Pete's saying we need to know, but the headlines are unhelpful, so which is it?
I mean, I think Pete's got an absolute point that there is definitely probably an agenda behind the turn on the NHS and the narrative, but I do think there is a difficult line to be walked, because public service, which is what the NHS is and why we care about it, we feel that really strong sense of public ownership of the NHS. So we do have a right to expect transparency in how it's run. And I think what's worrying is not whether or not it's being reported in the papers, but what's going on underneath is this sense that people feel they have to cover up mistakes, rather than mistakes are going to happen. In any service that big, there are going to be mistakes. What is actually vital, rather than thinking, oh God, oh God, oh God, I'm going to end up in the papers, I'm going to lose my job, is actually inculcating a culture of how do we learn from mistakes to reduce them happening in the future. And that's what worries me, is this sense of, if we just immediately turn on a dime to you're not perfect, therefore you're evil and wrong, we're actually not getting the best from both the service and learning from mistakes.
But if they're going to sort out the mistakes, they want to sort out the biggest mistake ever. How many people actually died of COVID? we will never know how many people actually died, because if you'd fallen under a bus, gone into hospital, died with COVID, you wouldn't have been put down on the register as you died through a car accident. It would have been COVID. So the biggest mistake to me is how many people actually died of COVID. The figures we were getting, were they real? So let's not just pick out a few people. Let's go for the bigger picture.
Well, if you want to talk bigger picture, actually, I would argue the biggest mistake that was made was the 2012 NHS Health and Social Care Bill, because that's what dissipated us into these different segments all over the place of the NHS.
You're not a fan of Alistair Darling?
2012 wasn't Alistair Darling, it was the Conservatives by then.
Right, yeah. No, you're quite right, yes.
It was the bill that was described as so big it could be seen from space, and it's so disastrous it probably should have been sent into space. It's what's absolutely left the NHS in this vulnerability to crisis.
Well, we must never ever forget, we have got one of the most amazing services in the world.
Absolutely.
And we take it for granted. Go to India, go to Pakistan, go to these countries, you'll get the shock of your life.
You'll not get any argument from me, but I don't think we should just say, well, we've got this great service. What's happened is that we also need to make sure that it is being managed in the best possible way for the people who run it, for the incredible people on the front line of it, and for the people who it serves.
Emma, front page of The Observer, PM to sacrifice top official over Partygate to save himself.
I mean, another day, another person Boris throws under a bus, right? What fascinates me actually is that I am, and I'm often on, and occasionally even described on your show as your token lefty, but when I was growing up, I had a different political philosophy from Conservatives, but there was a sense that they knew that governing was about taking responsibility, that the person at the top took responsibility. And I don't know where that strand of small c conservatism has gone in the Tory party. It just seems to have completely vanished, and now it's a kind of laissez-faire, we want power, we don't know what on earth to do with it other than just to keep ourselves in power, and we'll do that by making everything worse for everybody else. And it's extraordinary. Should Simon Case take some responsibility? Yeah, probably. Should Boris? Absolutely.
Pete, what are your thoughts on that?
The man is a law to himself, isn't he? The man is actually a law to himself. This business now that he's been talking about, the next report coming out about him, it just beggars belief. And dare I say, in a way, you've got to admire the cheek of the man. I'll get castigated in Liverpool for that. Sorry about that, gang. Sorry about that. But no, he is a law to himself. Is he going to survive again? I mean, But
he said sorry, he paid the fine.
How many times can he say sorry, though? I mean, he's they're after him again. But, having said that, the press want him out. I mean, the press in this country are lovely. When they get the needle over something, they definitely want to get them out. And they want him out. What the alternative is, it's going to be interesting.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it? The Tories don't know.
No.
And until the Tories know who's to replace him with, they're stuck in this sort of headless chicken world of we don't really want him to lead us, but we don't really know who we do want. And unfortunately, if it was just the Tories stuck in headless chicken world, I wouldn't really care. Sadly, they're in charge of the country, so I do have to care.
GBViews at gbnews.uk if you want to react to anything that our newspaper reviewers are saying this morning, join in any of the conversations that we're having. Pete, the Rwanda immigration plan has been analysed in the Daily Mail. Who say it's not working? Who say it is working?
It is working. It's an interesting story. Asylum seekers are abandoning their attempt to stay in the UK because they are afraid they might be sent to Rwanda. The Mail on Sunday have learnt up to 10 migrants have already asked to be returned home rather than risk having their claims for refugee status over here. What bothers me about this is we've got to stop people coming across the channel. I still don't understand why they don't stay in the country they go to. I cannot get my head around that. They want freedom. By the way, I'm glad I'm not in the position. I'm very lucky that I've got a country. We can't imagine what they go through. But these traffickers have got to be stopped. They are wicked, wicked people. They are the dregs of humanity that make me so angry. But if people are changing their mind, Because let's face it, a lot of people want to come here because they hear about the benefit system. They want the best for their lives. But all these men are coming over without their children and wives or their girlfriends or sisters. And if there is a deterrent, then this seems to be, sadly, the way to go forward.
Yeah, it's working, Emma.
Is it? I mean, read the story. The story is... How that story made the front page is beyond me as someone who's worked as a journalist for a really long time. The story, when you read it, says up to 10 migrants may have changed their mind. There's no context about how many might have also done that before this scheme was supposedly in place. We are, at the beginning of May, we were at nearly 8,000 people who'd crossed in the small boat system alone. We don't even know if these 10 are people who claimed asylum having come over on the small boats. I completely agree with Pete that the small boat system is run by vile people who are being empowered to do this because the system as it should work doesn't. But I'm sorry, it doesn't feel to me like a front page acclamation that you can make that it is working, and they've underlined is, when your factual point in your first paragraph is up to 10 people have made this decision with no background about how many might have made.
Well, let's put your journalist head on. Look at that. Look at that as selling a paper. So many people are against them coming into this country. They'll go, oh, I'll have a copy of that.
Well, they will, but that's not right. You're
No, I know. Couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you
How
more.
much of it does it work as a deterrent, though, when those flights actually haven't taken off yet? No migrant has seen anybody actually go to
Well, again,
Rwanda,
that's absolutely right. We can't judge it yet. Whatever your criteria, my criteria for what works might be different from the government's. But let's take the government's criteria as standard. We just cannot know if it works until it's happening.
How much of this is wishful thinking, do you think? We see these headlines all the time. There's one a few weeks ago where it was saying, you know, people aren't coming over now, they're scared about Rwanda. Turned out it was more to do with the weather. And we had poor weather, and once it got sunny again, we saw absolute record-breaking numbers over that bank holiday weekend. It's just something that we hope for in this country.
No, it's a great point.
It's a big
Wishful
issue for us, isn't it?
wishful thinking. But we also need people to work. So we need people coming into the country. You know, since Brexit, we've lost so many people, and these people are willing to put a life together and work every hour God sends, which is the backbone of this country, which we need to get workers in because there's so many jobs nobody wants to do.
Yeah, finally, I'll get your thoughts on the front page. Emma, you wanted to talk about Tories and threat to torpedo unions.
Yes, these are two different threats, which are quite interesting. The first is Grant Shapps saying a minimum number of people have to work during a rail strike, which I can't see being legal, frankly. You cannot force someone, the right to withdraw your labour is a fundamental right, basically. You're not going to get paid for it. That's what the decision you make. When you take a strike, you say, I will forego a day's pay to fight for my rights. That's a fundamental right. It's annoying to people who want to get the train. Totally get that. That's why it works, generally. That's why it's a bargaining tool. Now, should it be a bargaining tool that pushes people to the negotiating table? Absolutely. Should it be a last resort? Absolutely. I think it's much more of a last resort than you'll ever hear from the rhetoric coming from this government and sometimes from some unions. The other one is actually a different story, which is about the changing rules around complaints in education and opening up who you can take with you to a complaint in education, so you don't have to take just a union member or a colleague. Now, I don't have a big problem with that. I don't think it will have the effect on the teaching unions that the government thinks it will have, because I think the government are, again, wishful thinking. They've got this vision of what they think unionism is all about, and they're very anti it just as a general thing. Actually, I imagine that most teachers will go, you see that union rep who actually knows all the rules and regulations and knows how to make my case really well because they've been trained in it. I think I'd rather have them in the room than anyone else.
Pete, what are your thoughts on this? Because, you know, we started at the top of this hour, we were talking about it evoking Thatcher's Britain in the 80s, and she took on the unions, didn't she? Now, would you say that the unions have too much power in this country?
I think they've got too much power. I had a bad experience with a union. I won't mention the union, but I had a bad experience, and they did nothing for me, and I paid my dues, I paid my subs, I did everything. they never helped me at all. And I'm sure a lot of people out there know what I do for a living, so I'm sure they'll guess what the union was. I think they have got too much power, and I think it's scary. And they're also, the leaders, earning a great deal of money out of that power as well. So I'm not really a union person.
Yeah. What? So.
I mean, I had a similar experience actually, and I will name them. Unite, they were useless. But there's conceptually being in favour of unionism, which I am. There are good and bad unions. I know some great people who work for some great unions, and it's generally, actually, it's the stuff on the ground that makes the difference rather than the big mouthy blokes at the top, and it's usually blokes, sadly. I do think that in the same way that I said this about the NHS, I think unions could be better, and I think that there's a too much. You either go, you're for or against unions, rather than going, how can we, as people who believe in unions, make them better?
Yeah,
and that's something I believe in.
It's very interesting. In Germany, the unions are given a place on the board, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's more of a consensual relationship with the employer, whereas here they're pitched against each other more. Well, that's how we've always viewed it.
I think we can learn a lot from Germany anyway.
Absolutely.
I think it's an amazing country, amazing country.
Yeah, good for sausages and beer.
And
very
unions.
clean.
It is a very clean country, yeah.
place. It stayed with me forever. That I just thought, I just love the place.
Yeah, we digress, but thank you.
Excuse me. When I'm on, we always digress.
That's what this is all about, digressing, isn't it? Going off on tangents. Listen, guys, thanks for being here this morning with us. We'll have more from Emma and Pete in an hour.